Voices for change, and then making sure that we have a president, I cannot put my partisanship aside, a Democratic president, who will take that office and use it to protect the streets and the kids that grow up on those streets, and make sure that we once again have an assault weapon ban, a Brady bill with the full force of the law on the land, because we need somebody in the Oval Office that moves this Congress. We had an election about change. People are clear about the special interests. They are tired of that gridlock that special interests cause in Washington. And I think the most simple thing we can do, and we've got to make this a #1 issue as a test vote and then take it into the election, that is, if you are on the no-fly list because you are known as maybe a possible terrorist, you cannot buy a handgun in America. If you're on that no-fly list, your access to the right to bear arms is canceled because you're not part of the American family. You don't deserve that right. There is no right for you.
That's the kind of people we're dealing with. Hey, can you own a gun in Chicago? No. Can you own one in New York? No. Can you own one in London? No. Can you own one in Paris? No. Anywhere these people get in control. What's the UN have out front their building in New York? A .357 Magnum, Dirty Harry style, tied in a knot. A civilian gun. And by the way, I'm sick of calling these people liberals. They're not liberals. They're authoritarians posing as nanny state people that want to take care of you. What they want is to have you as their slaves. Now let me stop right there. Hey, cops, you think you're being given those tasers because it gives you something lower powered on the threat continuum? Read this. They're going to take your guns when they're done. And all you're going to have is a federalized brigade of troops and a local SWAT team that are under them. You notice under these national emergency agreements, the SWAT team and the emergency teams are already federal and already over at the threat fusion centers. In the future, the police aren't going to be able to have guns. Don't believe me? Go read 7277. Send off to the State Department for a booklet of it. This is what's in the UNIDIR document. This is what's in the UN treaty that I was just reading to you from Forbes. Forbes. By the way, when they're done disarming the police, they've got graphics in there showing the build down. That's why they called it build down in '61. You thought that term was new? The build down is once the UN NATO army's built. And guess who the UN army's going to be? 1961, NATO. People are like, oh, NATO will never be the world army. What do they call it now? The world army. This is the real model. They use Al-Qaeda to scare everybody into giving up their rights when we're really the target. Get sophisticated, folks. Wake up. Here is the Attorney General. And this treaty, they could sign it the next month. Here is the Attorney General talking about how, this is on C-SPAN, how he met with TV heads to brainwash people to be anti-gun. Here it is.
We just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. Brainwash people into thinking about guns. The
full clip's online. It's like a 30-minute C-SPAN clip, and he goes on to say we've got to have anti-gun messages on TV, everywhere. Not anti-criminals with guns, anti-citizens. That's why cops move up the chain really fast. You ask any cop if they throw the book at a law-abiding citizen for their guns, catching them in some little thing. Let's go out to break with ABC News, gun confiscation, Katrina. And remember, we have declassified Army training manuals for this year, going back to '06, for gun confiscation. Look it up, Army Manual for Gun Confiscation. Look it up, it's public. Not 29 Palms, not a survey. They're training to take your guns in cordon cities in the U.S. This is treason. Is the military bad? No. Those trying to use them as a weapon against our republic and our God-given rights that our forebears fought hard for, that's treason. I'm going to take you out to break with the gun confiscation. We're going to come back. Remember this, high and dry homes. Here it is.
That includes New Orleans, where today authorities stepped up their efforts to empty the city. Bob Woodruff is there again tonight with an extraordinary human drama unfolding. Bob?
That's true, Elizabeth, and good evening from New Orleans. Here, the police and the National Guard find themselves in a very difficult position tonight to try to carry out an order to force people from the city without actually using force.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police Department!
After guns were registered and then confiscated. And in many of these massacres, it was the UN that did it. So go up to Infowars.com in the featured news area, get those videos and those articles, and email them out to everybody you know right now. You didn't think government takeover of healthcare would happen, and there wasn't death panels in it. Now they admit it. They're going to phase it in over the next couple of years. People didn't believe any of this would happen. People didn't believe when I told you 2 years ago Obama was shipping guns into Mexico and hand grenades to drug gangs so they could blame the Second Amendment and try to get a UN treaty passed so that Mexico could sue the U.S. at the UN over guns. By the way, you know they did that as part of that larger immigrant lawsuit. This is an international program to get us onto a treaty because courts found that they didn't have any standing on executions, guns, any of it. So now when we sign this treaty, Mexico can go to the UN to try to force us to do something. See, this is what this is all about. And meanwhile, the State Department's own memorandum, which means it's U.S. policy, 7277 that I just mentioned. State Department Memorandum 7277. Notice I keep saying that. It's time to put down the remote, miss a football game or whatever's on right now. What do they have in the middle of the summer? Baseball? It's time to put down the remote, folks, or it's all going out the window. You lose the liberty, you lose the prosperity. And the feds wouldn't let people walk out. They blocked it. They use it as a siege development, as a siege drill of New Orleans. And why? Because it's what's in the Army manuals. We now have the Army manual they were using in 95, 96. We have the new manual. It's got gun confiscation in it. We covered that a week ago. The Army isn't even hiding this. Do you understand? We've got to say no to all this. The government is run by Chicago Mafia that shipped guns into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment and got caught with the memos saying they were going to blame the Second Amendment and ban all semi-autos. That's a false flag stage terror attack, frame up, self-inflicted wound, inside job. You may have heard me talk about those. It's dirty government's favorite trick. That's why you never give up liberty for security. Because the minute you say you'll give up liberty and be a slave for security, those that want you to be a slave are going to start staging stuff to take your rights and pose as your savior. It is elementary. And the first time they get a chance when a city's in trouble, they blockade from the hundreds of police departments and fire departments that wanted the Coast Guard wasn't allowed in. Walmart wasn't allowed in, remember? And what they do, they ran into high and dry areas. Some of those houses look like $10 million houses if you watch the video, and took their guns. Took their guns. Took their guns. Blew their safe doors and stole them. Listen to this ABC report. Here it is, from where it was. Play it.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police Department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police Department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house. They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You said guns will be taken?
Yeah, no one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes. For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. Yeah, you never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
Be shooting in America.
Yeah.
Let's go to Chris in Oklahoma. Chris, you're on the air on the Alex Jones Show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Health Ranger, how's it been?
Good. It's good here, man. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I was with the 45th Infantry Brigade, Delta Company, 1st of the 279, 2nd Platoon. During Hurricane Katrina, I'm kind of calling it in on yesterday's subject. I'm sorry about that.
It's all right.
But I don't. It's just I've always wanted to get a hold of you guys and kind of get the word out there for those that still have that slight hesitation in the back of their head that gun confiscation can't and won't happen here. It already has. And I was only 21 years old, just really gung-ho, really dedicated to the Army, especially to the infantry. And I did whatever I was told.
And what did they ask you to do?
Oh, let's see, the first thing we did was we got a 3-week, a book full of 3-week-old 911 phone calls, right? And then we had to go around and answering all the phone calls, so we were like cadaver dogs for about 3 weeks. And in between them, we would run night missions. And here's the thing. A lot of people may think that they'll see this on the news or they'll have time to get ready when the crap hits the fan or whatever. It's just it's a truck, you know what I mean? It's a group of trucks. They pull up, they stack right on your home, as we did, and we broke entry. Yeah, we would yell out, "Oklahoma Army National Guard, is anybody in need of assistance?" But that's as we were booting in the door.
And you were confiscating firearms?
Left and right, yes. And we were also monitoring the New Orleans police.
Did anybody resist? Did anybody ever shoot back? What happened?
Well, we had a couple of people resist verbally, and they got stuffed and cuffed very violently. We throw them in the back of the 5-ton or the deuce and a half or whatever, and then we take them out to the Greyhound bus station, which was the police station at the time. Like what I was saying, like before we came up or before the break. I think it was like the second day we were there, this redheaded lady came up to our platoon's area, and she sat, or to our company area, she sat on the curb with her knees in her chest, just rocking back and forth, crying uncontrollably. She sat there for almost 27 hours, just refused to move. We talked to her, we did everything we could, just didn't want to, you could tell she had been through enough. She'd been repeatedly raped by men in NOPD masks and NOPD uniforms.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Oh, yeah. So we were told, at that point we were told the NOPD obviously isn't our friend. We need to start watching them. The FBI had us out there at Cooter Brown, which is the NOPD Sheriff's Brothers Bar. It's like the big cop bar there in New Orleans.
Just so people know, NOPD is New Orleans Police Department, just for people who know.
Yeah, definitely. Or it's not the police department.
So a lot of those cops were then just total rogue. I mean, we saw video of some of them going in and looting retail stores and things like that, but they were raping women down there?
Definitely. Raping women. They were... we got two separate women that came to our company alone, and when I was there, I met cats from the California Guard, Indiana Guard, you name it, everybody was... But how... It was just a free-for-all. Police from all over the country, Dallas County... Dallas, Texas sheriffs down there.
But how did you and your team justify to yourselves and each other that gun confiscation would help this situation when it was a free-for-all? I mean, isn't that a time when citizens need to be able to defend themselves?
It never, like I said, I was just ignorant as hell. And that's kind of something that I worry about with the kids today, if they really realize what they're doing. I had no idea. The only time it ever occurred to me that something may be wrong is we came up, we were down by the old French district. We came up to this man's house. He had a big wooden sign that says, "I'm here alone with my dog and my shotgun. Looters beware." We thought, it's funny. Everyone stopped and took pictures of the sign. But eventually we took his guns. Jeez. And we left him there with nothing.
So now that you know what you know, now that you're listening to the Alex Jones Show and you're informed, what would you advise people to do if this happens again?
Well, I called. I mean, no offense. I mean, Mike, we love everything you do. I'm a big fan of the Health Ranger, but I was hoping to get a hold of Alex for the fact that what do you do when they stack right? You know what I mean? And they're prepped to come into the home. There's no negotiating with us. Trust me. There was no negotiating.
Yeah.
If you resisted, you died. That were the orders.
That's some frightening information, and I just hope that the military. The members of the military say no. They refuse to engage in gun confiscation because no doubt there could be outbreaks of violence and a lot of needless death and bloodshed if that happens. But thank you for your call, Chris. That's very concerning.